Chapter 601. After being reprimanded by Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo regained her senses as she gave Kitty Li a smile. "It's my fault, I've made you guys worried." Zhou Xian, who was still in battle, also shot a worried gaze over. "Sister Childine is not really invincible. All the beasts have their Achilles heel." Kitty Li puffed her cheeks, apparently still angry. But she knew that now wasn't the time to be angry. Kitty Li's lively eyes blinked. "Sister, I'll help you." Saying that, Kitty Li had already turned into a black remnant image. She arched her body and like an agile kitten, she speedily shuttled around Childine. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she congealed her senses and raised the feather fan in her hands, adjusting her own rhythm as she launched a new round of attacks. High-leveled mirage beasts also had their Achilles heel. No matter how strong Childine was, as long as they found its weak point, they would be able to target that point and deal with it. That black-cloaked man should be an extremely troublesome person. Even Zhou Xian found it hard to deal with that person. No wonder that person was able to control 7th-level high-leveled mirage beast. The current her was to congeal to deal with Childine. She mustn't bring any burden to Zhou Xian, and also mustn't let the world group's youngsters lose their confidence. Achilles heel. She would definitely be able to find it. Kitty Li's speed was extremely fast. She, who had a cat beast's physique in some aspects, was extremely similar to a cat. After a few somersaults and leaps, she had already arrived behind Childine. That slender jade-like hand, in a blink of an eye, her nails became extremely long, sharp and curved like hooks. That claw of hers grabbed onto Childine's tail without any hesitation. Childine, which was the size of a mountain, its tail was naturally as thick as a tree. After Kitty Li grabbed onto its tail, she used all her strength to pull it. Not too long later, Kitty Li's palm was filled with a pile of fur. Kitty Li's claw struck down and that sharp hook pierced into Childine's flesh. Yiqing Luo was watching by the side as she shuddered. Oh my god. No wonder he was a beast human with cat beast's bloodline, to be able to change any part of his body into a beast race's form. A beast's tail was indeed a fatal Achilles heel. But Childine's weak point didn't seem to be his tail. When Kitty Li's claws came down, Childine actually swung its tail and directly used its tail to lift Kitty Li's petite body up as it kept on swinging her around in mid-air. There were lush trees all around and this fall naturally knocked into those trees. Luckily Kitty Li was agile and her claws grabbed onto Childine's tail as she climbed up agilely. Childine's tail swept across the trees and the surroundings rumbled continuously. Not the tail. When the few of them saw that, they immediately increased the speed of their attacks, attempting to divert Childine's attention away from Kitty Li. After all, Kitty Li was just a little girl. Even if he was fast, nimble and strong, he would not be able to withstand it. But in the eyes of Xiao Jin and the rest, Kitty Li was like a little sister. The few of them kept releasing their Xianxia. However, Childine only stared at Kitty Li, who was still sprawled on him. Although its tail was not its Achilles heel compared to other parts of its body, it was its bottom line. This human who was emitting a cat stench not only used her claws to cut its tail, she even attempted to chop off its tail. How could Childine not only stare at Kitty Li? Whereas to it the others were merely tickling. Chapter 602. In a moment of desperation, she didn't aim at Childine's neck, but directly shot towards its eyes. The eyes were the weakest part of humans. Naturally, it was the weakest part of beast. Yiqing Luo didn't believe that this Childine was so powerful that it could train its entire body into an impenetrable copper and iron wall. Childine's attention was focused on Kitty Li. It was because it was overly confident of itself, so towards Yiqing Luo's attack, it had no reaction at all. Those strands of silver threads kept on revolving, like silver needles, as one after another shot directly into its copper bell-sized eyes. Roar, roar, roar. A sharp howl instantly reverberated throughout the entire magic beast forest. Yes, the entire magic beast forest was eerily cold, and because of this howl, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed violently. Blood spurted out from its eyes. Childine was in so much pain that it grimaced in pain, as it raised its hand and broke those strands of silver threads which had pierced into its eyes. Childine's reaction was swift and it only got pierced in one eye, as it avoided the other eye's silver threads. While Childine was howling in pain, Kitty Li speedily leapt down from its body as she returned to Yiqing Luo's side. Roar, 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 roar. A fierce roar that was filled with raging anger rang out. That eye which was filled with blood was scarlet red. The other eye was also emitting scarlet fury. These people had completely infuriated it. The ground shook as the mountains shook. Following Child Yin's howl, those magical beasts which were battling with the other youngsters all started to howl as well. In a split second, the entire forest was filled with waves of magical beasts' howls. One after another, it was especially ear-piercing. Yiqing Luo's body, which was suspended in mid-air, suddenly swayed as she almost fell down. She couldn't help but creased her brows tightly as her slender hand covered her chest. A fishy sweetness surged up her throat as though it was about to gush out from her mouth. Lass, circulate your profound jade heart's profound qi, protect your heart meridians. By her ear, old man Song's anxious voice rang hazily. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, as her eardrums felt a piercing pain. Not only her. Quite a few of the youths around him had already vomited blood from the howls of the magical beasts. These magical beasts were all mid to high-level magical beasts. Coupled with a high-level mirage beast, if they howled in unison, it would be easy for a low-level profound practitioner's internal organs to rupture and die from this howl. Brothers, protect your heart. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief and reprimanded in her delicate voice. But after this howl, Yiqing Luo was like a puppet with a broken string falling straight down from the sky. Fortunately, Kitty Li was by his side. As a beastman, she was not affected by the howls of the beasts. She speedily supported Yiqing Luo, and her hand, which had already returned to normal, gently placed on the back of Yiqing Luo's hand, which was pressing on her chest. Cat. Yiqing Luo was surprised. A warm feeling slowly flowed into Yiqing Luo's heart. That source wrapped around her heart and harmonized with her profound jade heart. The sharp pain in his eardrums and the sweet taste in his throat finally subsided. Just as Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief, a scorching feeling suddenly arose in her heart, as though a raging fire was burning. Kitty Li, who was transferring her profound qi, suddenly retracted her hand, as though she was scalded, as she looked at her own palm in disbelief. It was still fair, but that scorching pain still remained in her palm. What was going on? Kitty Li stared at Yiqing Luo in astonishment, seeing her slender brows knitted into a bundle, as her delicate body kept twisting as though she was in extreme pain. Chapter 603. Sister. Kitty Li panicked as she called out to Yiqing Luo. But Yiqing Luo seemed as though she couldn't hear what she said as she shut her eyes tightly, writhing in pain in her arms. Yiqing Luo could no longer hear any sounds from the outside world. She was in so much pain, her entire body was in pain. So painful that it felt like something was expanding from the bottom of her heart, as though it was about to explode, squeezing her. Hundreds of beasts howled one after another, exploding unceasingly in her head. Boom. That howl turned into a ray of white light in her mind. Yiqing Luo lost all her consciousness as she fainted. Sister. Qing Luo. Kitty Li, Qiao Jin and the others shouted in unison. Long Yunzhan's figure swayed as he appeared next to Kitty Li, his azure blue eyes staring intently at Yiqing Luo. Just as he stretched out his hand to carry Yiqing Luo from Kitty Li's arms, his back suddenly felt a chill as the human dragon's perception made Long Yunzhan's feet flashed slightly as he evaded. Following that, he saw Zhou Xian's figure flashed past and Yiqing Luo was already in his arms. This lunatic. Long Yunzhan's eyes sunk. What are you doing? There was a mysterious dark forces man over there. He just left that person behind and rushed over? Wouldn't that be giving the dark forces a chance to counterattack? Zhou Xian ignored Long Yunzhan as his pair of chilly eyes stared at the little woman in his arms. Her face was pale and there was no reaction. No matter how he used his profound qi to probe the condition of her body, it didn't evoke any reaction from her. If it wasn't for the fact that Yiqing Luo's breathing was still smooth. If it wasn't for the fact that Yiqing Luo's brows were still tightly knitted. Zhou Xian almost thought that the person in his arms had already. His slender long fingers were on Yiqing Luo's shoulder as he slowly tightened his grip on her clothes. That peerless face was expressionless as though it was covered with frost, making one feel as though they were in an ice house. Lil Luo, His hoarse voice was filled with worry. Zhou Xian hugged Yiqing Luo tightly as his gaze was fixed on her face, not allowing any other person to enter. Seeing Dmo Xian in this state, Long Yunzhan couldn't say anything else. He squinted his azure blue eyes and looked not too far away, at that black-cloaked man who had already returned to stand on Child Yin's shoulder. The black-cloaked man was still wearing a cloak, but it wasn't hard to see that he was in an extremely sorry state. The cloak on his body had already been shredded into several pieces by the profound qi. Even when he was standing on Child Yin's shoulder, he seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. That Child Yin was still howling continuously. Each sound was sharper than the one before. Hundreds of beasts cried out in unison, as if they were responding to the strongest among the beasts. Dmo Xian's thoughts were all placed on Yiqing Luo. The enchantment suddenly disappeared. Child Yin's furious howls and hundreds of beasts' howls were clearly transmitted into Ji Tian and Lan Ling Nua's eardrums. Lan Ling Nua was merely in Mystic Profound First Grade, and when this voice entered her ears, she instantly spat out a mouthful of blood as her delicate body fell limply into Ji Tian's arms. Sister Nua. Ji Tian frantically hugged Lan Ling Nua tightly as his eyes were filled with heartache. As for those group members who sat by the side and listened to his orders, not leaving the barrier, other than obeying his orders, it was also because their profound grades weren't high and their abilities weren't high, so they were afraid of death, which was why they stayed behind. Now that the barrier had dispersed, these people couldn't take it as they directly spat out blood as they fell onto the ground. There were a few group members whose internal organs were ruptured as they died on the spot. Chapter 604. At this moment, Ji Tian couldn't be bothered about their gender difference as his palm immediately covered Lan Ling Nua's chest. The woman's soft chest bumped into his palm. Up and down, it made Ji Tian's delicate-looking face instantly turn red. The woman in his arms was the woman he loved. How could he not be distracted by this? Brother Tian. Lan Ling Nua's brows creased tightly in pain as she kept twisting her body. She was unable to avoid those continuous beast cries, so she could only seek help from Ji Tian. The more she moved, the more Ji Tian's breathing was unable to calm down. He forced himself to hold on to his will and transmitted his profound qi to protect Lan Ling Nua's heart meridian. The other members who had fallen to the ground were completely disappointed. His team members, his brothers, all had their hearts shattered by the howling of the beasts, and several of them had even died. However, this regiment commander actually did not have the slightest reaction. He didn't even say a word of concern. In his heart there was only that woman, Lan Ling Nua. A brother who had risked his life for him was inferior to a woman? How could these team members remain calm in their hearts? Whereas Ji Tian didn't feel that there was any problem with his way of doing things. In his eyes, Blue Dragon Mercenary Group was established by him alone, so it was natural for these group members to listen to him. Moreover, from today onwards, Lan Ling Nua was their sister-in-law. Naturally, his sister-in-law was the most important. In order to prevent his beastly nature from being triggered by his beloved woman's delicate body, Ji Tian turned his gaze towards the battlefield. Then he was stunned. Not only him, the other members of the Blue Dragon Group were all stunned when they saw Yiqing Luo fainting. Their eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. The roar of hundreds of beasts would only affect those with lower mystic ranks. Those who were able to reach the 5th level were mostly in the mystic profound realm and above. He wasn't affected much. In the hearts of these group members, these youngsters in the world group were all top-notch prodigies and experts. However, when the 100 beasts cried out, at least half of the 60-odd people were affected. That also meant to say that at least half of the world group's youngsters were mystic profound grade 5 and below. How was this possible? These youths had a tacit understanding of each other and were ruthless. Moreover, they were able to deal with the high-level magical beasts with ease. No matter what, his profound rank should be above the members of the Blue Dragon Group. What shocked them the most was Yiqing Luo. Ever since the incident of snatching that bear beast's corpse, Blue Dragon Group's members had already treated Yiqing Luo as a goddess-like figure. She was strong. He was strong enough to command this powerful mercenary group. Otherwise, how would Yiqing Luo dare to deal with a high-level mirage beast from the 7th level? That was a high-level magical beast. A magical beast. And it was from the 7th level. But, unexpectedly, Yiqing Luo's profound grade was only at the mystic profound 4th grade. This rank in the Blue Dragon Mercenary Group wasn't the lowest mystic rank, but He definitely couldn't be considered as an expert and could only be placed in the reserve team as a substitute member. But they had no choice but to admit that even if it was Xianxia, the group leader, personally going up against Yiqing Luo in a one-on-one battle, I'm afraid Xianxia wasn't able to gain any advantage. In the group members' hearts, the feeling towards Yiqing Luo was not something that could be described with the word admiration. The current Yiqing Luo hadn't really fainted. It was pitch black in front of her and a ray of white light flickered, piercing Yiqing Luo's eyes. She wanted to rub her temples, rubbing her glabella to ease the intense pain. But her body wasn't able to move. Her four limbs seemed as though they were shackled as they were extremely stiff. Chapter 605. Her heart was burning like a raging fire. Yiqing Luo was in unbearable pain. Was she afraid of pain? No. In the past she had endured the pain of having her flesh cut into her bones and didn't make a sound. But she really couldn't endure this kind of intense pain that squeezed her internal organs and ruptured her eardrums. She wanted to cry out to vent out this pain. But not only was her body unable to move, even her mouth and throat seemed to be glued. Lass, quickly condense your breath. Stay awake. In her ears, Old Man Song's voice seemed to be mixed in with the cries of the beasts. Old Man Song kept shouting and shouting, but Yiqing Luo couldn't hear clearly. Old Man Song repeated it over and over again. After a long time, Yiqing Luo pieced together a complete sentence from the few fragmented words in his words. Yiqing Luo braced her willpower and followed Old Man Song's words, trying hard to condense her breath. Lass, the mother of the profound jade heart is by your side. You only need to control the profound jade heart in your body, the rest. You can only rely on yourself. Old Man Song's words made Yiqing Luo very puzzled. The mother of the profound jade heart? Wasn't it Zhou Xian? Zhou Xian was by her side? Then, what about that black-cloaked man? Why did he let her control the profound jade heart in her body? Countless questions kept revolving in her mind, expanding and almost about to explode. Yiqing Luo couldn't think any more. A surge of heat surged in her heart and instantly swallowed her consciousness. Ah! A mournful scream overflowed from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Qing Luo. Sister. The few people standing behind Zhou Xian surrounded her and cried out worriedly. They had never heard Yiqing Luo cry out like this. In their hearts, Yiqing Luo had always been a strong girl, strong to the point that she wouldn't cry out in pain. Today when they heard her scream, everyone's heart seemed to be strangled by something. Breathing was difficult. The lady in Zhou Xian's arms had pale lips that were devoid of blood as blood kept gushing out, causing that extremely pale complexion to add a tinge of bewitching color. Everyone's hearts were trembling. Pairs of hopeful gazes looked towards Zhou Xian. Overlord. He was like a deity, everyone's hope at this moment. The legend of the Nirvana realm, the legendary man. He definitely had a way to save Yiqing Luo. Zhou Xian lowered his eyelids, his curved eyelashes casting a shadow below his eyes. Then he slowly raised his head and looked at Kitty Li. Look at her. His eyes were filled with a thick chill. Kitty Li trembled as she subconsciously walked over and took over Yiqing Luo, who was in Zhou Xian's arms. The arch. Qiao Jin realized what Zhou Xian wanted to do and immediately called out to him. But Zhou Xian seemed as though he couldn't hear his voice as he flew towards Child Yin's direction. Qiao Jin chased a few steps forward, but ultimately still stopped. The overlord had pampered Qing Luo in the palm of his hand. Seeing Qing Luo in such a state, the overlord's heart felt worse than anyone else. He wanted to take revenge for Qing Luo. The howls around them continued. Long Yunzhan congealed his senses as he took a deep look at Yiqing Luo. His azure blue eyes were tainted with a chilly glint. Kill. Leave none alive. Leave not a single one alive. Were they going to massacre the 5th level all the magical beasts who had taken part in this battle? Blue Dragon Group's members all felt that these youngsters had gone mad. Whereas for those youngsters, they clenched their fists tightly as they raised them up. That sonorous and forceful voice kept repeating the same word. Chapter 606. Zhou Xian's sudden attack caused Child Yin, who was still howling in pain, to not notice it at all. That huge mountain-like body fell backwards. The black-cloaked man on his shoulder swiftly leapt up and left Zhou Xian's attack range. Xian's charming thin lips curled upwards as his eyes were filled with frost, and the attacks in his hands became even more vicious and sharp, pressing towards the black-cloaked man. Earlier when he was battling with the black-cloaked man, Xian hadn't displayed his full strength, whereas the current Xian had apparently started to become serious. The black-cloaked man's original arrogance started to become timid as he fled in all directions. Under the black-cloaked man's summoning, Child Yin speedily climbed up as it stared with its blood-dripping eyes, pouncing towards Xian. One beast and one man tangled with each other. Long Yunzhan and the others knew that in this kind of battle, there was no chance for the mortals to interfere. If they allowed this bunch of magical beasts to continue howling, it would affect Yiqing Luo's injuries to a certain extent. He led the world group's youngsters and started killing those howling magical beasts. Yiqing Luo, who was in the abyss of suffering, struggled in pain, trying to break free from this pain. Lil Luo, I respect whatever you think. I will wait for you to walk side by side with me. Suddenly, an extremely pleasant voice sounded in his ears. That voice was mellow like fine wine, deep and clear. Sentence after sentence, it kept calling out her name. Those sentences were sweet and warm, warming one's heart. In a daze, a peerless face appeared in front of her. He looked at her lovingly and gave her an extremely gentle smile. Madame Qing Luo, the one who admires you the most now is Sister Ziqing. Madame Qing Luo, you're the center of devil class. Qing Luo. Immediately following that, familiar faces flashed past her eyes as she heard their voices calling out to her. These people's faces, these people's voices, slowly turned into a warm current, flowing in her heart. Wherever the warm current flowed through, the sharp pain from the tremors gradually disappeared. Even the profound jade heart which was burning in her heart seemed to have been extinguished. That warm current filled her limbs and bones, circulating 1 cycle, 2 cycles. Yiqing Luo became aware of something and immediately controlled her profound jade heart to continuously absorb that warm current, breathing it in and out, lingering around her profound jade heart. That warm current, under Yiqing Luo's control, gradually wrapped around the profound heart jade, forming a round ball. Following that, Yiqing Luo felt her body suddenly becoming light like a feather. All the pain had dissipated. His breathing was smooth and his body was filled with energy. Wave after wave of profound energy flowed continuously within her body. Kitty Li, who was hugging Yiqing Luo, kept transmitting her profound qi in an attempt to awaken Yiqing Luo and protect her heart meridians. However, the profound energy that was transmitted seemed to have fallen into a bottomless abyss, and it didn't receive any response at all. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo's body exploded with an intense light. Immediately following that ray of light directly lifted Yiqing Luo's body into mid-air. Sister! Kitty Li panicked. Her hands didn't even manage to hug Yiqing Luo tightly. She could only look on helplessly as Yiqing Luo's body rushed into mid-air. Everyone's gazes were attracted by this dazzling light. Everyone's vision all congregated over. The lady, who was in deep sleep, was surrounded by a violent force, as it kept dancing the lady's long hair which had fallen onto her shoulders. Her fine black hair danced as though it was floating in a dream. Chapter 607. The crowd looked at the lady in midair in astonishment. All the profound qi and that dazzling light surged towards the direction of Yiqing Luo's wrist. Faintly, cherry blossom-like totems could be seen on that slender wrist, which looked extremely flirtatious. What was going on? The youngsters looked at this scene in disbelief. By right, so much profound qi was encircling Yiqing Luo's surroundings. This should be the trend of her advancing. But these profound qi were not like ordinary cultivators who advanced, which was surging towards the cultivator's profound jade heart, but towards the wrist. While the crowd was puzzled, the black-cloaked man who was dealing with Zhou Xian was in a sorry state with injuries all over his body. The cloak on him had long been damaged, leaving only a veil which covered his entire face. That black-cloaked man had also noticed the situation over here. On seeing the cherry blossom totem on Yiqing Luo's wrist, he turned stiff. That was impossible. How could it be in Yiqing Luo's hands? The black-cloaked man stared at that cherry blossom totem in disbelief, as a biting cold glint flashed past his eyes. Qi! After a slight sound came to his ears, the black-cloaked man felt a sharp pain in his chest. The black-cloaked man lowered his eyes and saw a burst of profound qi penetrating through his body from his chest. The black-cloaked man raised his eyes in astonishment and met with a pair of icy cold peach blossom eyes. She is the person whom this lord wants to protect. Even this lord can't bear to hurt her just based on you. You dare to lay your eyes on her? The extremely ridiculing words were like frost, directly entering the black-cloaked man's ears. This lord? He was... Overlord? The black-cloaked man drew in a breath of cold air. The cloak on his head swayed as it fell onto the ground, revealing a skinny like firewood completely supported by bones and skin. It looked extremely horrifying. Especially now, the black-cloaked man's eyes were wide open, staring at Zhou Xian in disbelief. It was like a pair of eyeballs staring straight at Zhou Xian. Only a dead person will keep all secrets. Following Zhou Xian's cold voice, the black-cloaked man's body fell straight down without any signs of life. Zhou Xian retracted his hand and turned his gaze towards Yiqing Luo, who was floating in midair as his brows creased slightly. He was afraid that something big was going to happen. His little Luo. He had to grow up quickly. The profound qi which encircled Yiqing Luo's body and that dazzling light sped up the encirclement frequency, constantly mixing and colliding. Not long after, all of the profound qi had been absorbed into his wrist. Just as that ray of light disappeared, Yiqing Luo, who was suspended in midair, suddenly opened her eyes. Those dazzling star-like eyes shot out a powerful sharp blade. A powerful airflow revolved around her body. Even the air seemed to be rippling. Mystic Profound 4th grade. With a single leap, he directly advanced to Mystic Profound 8th grade. Here it comes again. The youngsters in the world group had already turned numb from being dumbstruck. Mother Astersker. It was another level skipping promotion. Their Madame Qing Luo was just too valiant. Was it really that easy to advance now, so casual? Whereas those members of the Blue Dragon group were completely dumbstruck. Were they dreaming? They had never heard of anyone being able to advance by 4 grades in a row. The only time they had heard of skipping promotion was 100 years ago, that genius from Three Springs sect, who was from Yellow Profound 5th grade to 7th grade. No one was like Yiqing Luo. Chapter 608. Childine. Yiqing Luo gave a delicate cry as she stepped into the air, and the strong airflow beneath her feet kept on spreading. Her charming eyes were filled with chilly intent as she stared straight at Childine as she roared furiously, "Come fight." Saying that, she shot up into the sky like an arrow leaving the bow. Roar roar. Childin's eyes revealed a murderous glint as it stared at this audacious human who dared to pierce its eye. The other eye, which was still intact, was filled with a scarlet murderous intent. Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she clenched her feather fan tightly and launched her attack. The profound qi which revolved around the feather fan in that intense whirlwind was on a totally different level from before. Especially that agile silver thread which covered the sky and earth as it entangled. There was no place to hide at all. Wave after wave of attacks, Yiqing Luo simply became braver as she fought. Childine kept on howling as it avoided Yiqing Luo's attacks. But the current Yiqing Luo's speed was much faster than before. Childine couldn't react at all, and in just a short moment, its body was already filled with big and small wounds. Some of its skin and flesh even started to ooze blood. It was so painful that Childine howled even more miserably. Under Long Yunzhan's lead, the surrounding magical beasts had been slaughtered, and there were still 20 over of them. These magical beasts were facing such a swift and fierce team, so how could they follow Childine to howl out? Even if they could howl, there were only 20 over of them left, so they were unable to create that kind of shock earlier. The current Yiqing Luo's body was as light as a feather. She felt that her breathing was getting smoother and smoother as her body became lighter and her speed became faster and faster. Even if she didn't display that set of footwork, her current speed was something which ordinary people absolutely could not chase up to. Her body had undergone a huge change. After the advancement, not only her profound grade had been upgraded, her overall strength and body quality had also been upgraded. She totally didn't feel any discomfort in her body and mind at all. Even his internal organs, which had been injured by the roars of hundreds of beasts, had been completely healed. Roar roar, stupid humans. A bunch of despicable humans. Childine howled loudly as that child's features on its face had already twisted into a sinister bundle. Its thick arms kept waving and slapping around. Yiqing Luo dodged it nimbly, and with a light tap of her toes, she circled around its body, and the silver threads shot out from her feather fan trapped it within. Suddenly, Child Yin's dancing hands stretched out as a furious roar rang out, and following that, a huge light ball was spat out from its mouth. That light ball was the size of Child Yin's head, which was equivalent to a huge rock which could fit 3 grown men. It headed directly towards Yiqing Luo's direction. "Qing Luo, be careful." The onlookers were so scared that their hearts skipped a beat. One by one they reminded him, their hearts in their throats. Yiqing Luo was stunned, Yiqing Luo was stunned, Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with curses. Damn it! What kind of technique was this? It even spit out light balls from its mouth. Was it a magical beast or a little monster? Yiqing Luo's figure swiftly swayed, and at the same time as she avoided the light ball, she kept on shouting, "Bring the men and evacuate quickly." The attack range of Child Yin's light ball is very far. She was able to avoid Child Yin's attack. But that didn't mean that the group of brothers behind her were able to avoid it. Under Child Yin's rage, the light ball which was released from its mouth was enough to sweep this entire forest. Long Yunzhan and the others reacted swiftly as they immediately brought everyone to evacuate. Chapter 609. Hence, if a group of people were to arrive at the 5th level to complete a mission, they would probably see this strange scene. In front of them, a large group of mercenaries who were in a sorry state ran forward. Behind them were 20 over-injured advanced-leveled magical beasts as they bared their fangs, howling as they chased after them. But only after running for 100 meters away, Long Yunzhan stopped in his tracks as he raised his hand to shout for them to stop. Following that, all of them turned around and started waving their weapons towards those 20 over-magical beasts, killing them. This position was out of the shooting range of the light ball, but they were still able to see Yiqing Luo clearly. That stretch of forest had already turned into ruins. The huge light ball exploded on the ground as sand and pebbles flew everywhere as dust curled upwards. The entire magical beast forest shook once again as it shook incessantly. Roar, roar. Seeing its own light ball being avoided by Yiqing Luo, Child Yin howled even louder as it pounded its own chest fiercely as it spat out one light ball after another. That's right. One by one. One after another, the huge light ball was like bullets as it bombarded downwards with a pitter-patter. Yiqing Luo avoided the first one, and the second light ball followed closely behind. When each light ball crashed onto the ground, it exploded a deep pit as it set off a huge airwave. This airwave also affected Yiqing Luo's performance. Just as Yiqing Luo avoided the third light ball, the airwave behind her directly caused Yiqing Luo's petite body to fall onto the ground. Immediately following that, the fourth light ball struck towards her. Qing Luo. Long Yunzhan and the others stopped their hands which were slashing the magical beasts as they shouted out towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Dead. That little slut is dead. Lan Ling Nua, who was carried in Ji Xianxia's arms, was filled with joy as she watched Yiqing Luo being swallowed by the light ball as she excitedly hugged Ji Xianxia's neck tightly. That spirited beautiful eyes were filled with joy as it was extremely beautiful. From the might of that light ball, it was totally able to flatten that stretch of forest. If Yiqing Luo was struck by that light ball, she probably wouldn't even have a full corpse left. The more she thought, the more excited Lan Ling Nua's expression became. She smiled and even smiled as she hugged his neck. Ji Xianxia's heart was thumping nonstop right now, so why would he care about what Lan Ling Nua said? She nodded in agreement with Lan Ling Nua's words. Yes, yes, yes. It's good that he died. It's good that he died. As long as younger sister Nua is happy. But they didn't know that the surrounding youths were glaring at them as if they were enemies who had killed their fathers. Wretched servant girl, say that one more time. Tong Ziqing took quick steps forward and directly pulled Lan Ling Nua out from Ji Xianxia's arms. She raised her hand and slapped Lan Ling Nua's face. Before Ji Xianxia could even react in time, he heard a crisp slap sound. Under her meticulous care, Lan Ling Nua's skin was extremely exquisite. Half of his face was flushed red from the slap, leaving a clear imprint of his 5 fingers. You crazy woman! What are you doing? Ji Xianxia swiftly rushed up, trying to carry Lan Ling Nua back. However, the girl in front of him looked small and delicate. but she just used one hand to casually change Lan Ling Nua's side. Tong Ziqing wasn't appeased as she raised her hand and gave Lan Ling Nua another slap on her left cheek as she scolded. If Qing Luo dies, I'll make your entire Blue Dragon mercenary group accompany her to the grave. These words made Ji Tsongtian's already gloomy face turn even colder. After hitting his woman, they even threatened his mercenary group? Did they really think that his Blue Dragon mercenary group was a bunch of vegetarians? These youngsters were just too arrogant. Chapter 610. Silence. A deathly silence. None of the group members who were standing behind Ji Tsongtian made a move. Ji Tsongtian's brows creased tightly as he looked at Lan Ling Nua's aggrieved look as the rage in his heart surged. Are you all deaf? This group leader says, tie up these people who don't know what's good for them. Save your sister-in-law. He shouted furiously as he turned around and stared at those group members behind him. But he discovered that the remaining 50 over group members, other than those 20 over people who followed Ji Tsongtian to stay in the array barrier, who were trembling while holding their weapons, not knowing what to do. The other group members all stared at Ji Tsongtian with a furious expression. They simply couldn't understand why their brilliant group leader had turned into this state today. Was it because of Lan Ling Nua, that wretched woman? Some group members couldn't help but burst out. Group leader, the person who doesn't know what's good for her is Princess Ling Nua, it's you. If it wasn't for the world group, if it wasn't for Miss Yi, we would have already become that huge beast, becoming the magical beast's food. We're mercenaries. We're real mercenaries. We will absolutely not do things like biting the hand that feeds us. One after another, the group members started to voice out the unhappiness in their hearts. But they knew clearly in their hearts that in their group leader's heart, Lan Ling Nua was a treasure which no one could taint. They didn't dare to blame everything on Lan Ling Nua, but in their words, the spearhead was pointed towards Lan Ling Nua. After being slapped twice, Lan Ling Nua's cheeks were swollen and red. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? She knew that she wasn't a match for Tong Ziqing, so she didn't dare to retaliate forcefully, only covering her mouth and her cheeks as tears started to flow down. Her mouth would occasionally, affectionately, call out Brother Tsongtian, looking as pitiful as she could be. When he heard the accusation from his team members, he cried even louder. The surrounding magical beasts had all been killed by the World Group's youngsters. Now that they heard Lan Ling Nua's sharp cries, they felt that it was ear-piercing and wanted to slap this lady till she fainted. Their hearts were filled with concern for Yi Qing Luo's safety, and Lan Ling Nua looked like she was at a funeral, so who would feel good about it? Hearing Lan Ling Nua's cries, Ji Tsongtian's heart ached as he totally didn't realize that it was his own fault, only feeling that his group members had all been brainwashed by the other party. The members who had always obeyed his orders dared to refute him today. They reprimanded him and even indirectly talked about their sister-in-law. If they hadn't been brainwashed by the other party, how could his members have become like this? Good you guys. You dare to resist my orders. You want to join their team, right? Fine. I'll fulfill your wish. Ji Tsongtian directly tore down the group leader's badge from his chest. The other group members realized what Ji Tsongtian wanted to do, and their expressions instantly changed. Ji Tsongtian was trying to make them leave the Blue Dragon Group. All of them were Blue Dragon Group's elite team, and Ji Tsongtian was willing to disregard their many years of brotherhood just for a woman? These members were completely disappointed. All of them clenched their fists so tightly that their veins popped out. The way they stared at Lan Ling Nua was as though they were looking at a vixen who could bring calamity to the country and people. Quickly look. Qiao Jin stared at Yi Qing Luo's direction as a glint flashed past his eyes as he cried out in joy. The World Group's youngsters weren't in the mood to appreciate this farce. Chapter 611. Only to see two figures appearing indistinctly in that dazzling light. It was Zhou Xian. That tall figure, under the pull of the dazzling light, projected a long shadow. Yi Qing Luo was embraced in his arms. Zhou Xian walked out from the light ball in an unhurried and steady manner. The air billows behind him blew up their sleeves and their black hair. Whereas Zhou Xian was still calm and composed as he walked slowly. The World Group's youngsters suddenly felt their eyes turning moist. They stared at the two people in the light as their suspenseful hearts finally calmed down. And Ruo Pan and Kitty Li were already crying out loud. Luckily, Luckily nothing happened to their Qing Luo. Luckily the Overlord was by their side. Roar, Child Yin's eyes widened as it looked even more ferocious. Light balls started to spew out from its mouth once again. These two despicable humans actually dared to look down on it. And even dared to turn their backs against it? Child Yin howled and that fat body which was like a mountain trembled, and following that, an endless stream of light balls were released. This time round the attack range had obviously expanded. It wanted to annihilate the entire 5th level. Long Yunzhan reacted in time as he swiftly called for everyone to leave at the fastest speed possible. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck as the both of them exchanged glances, and immediately, the corners of their lips twitched meaningfully. Following that, Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision shot a glance at Child Yin as she leapt up from Dmo Xian's arms. Dmo Xian followed closely behind her. Two figures floated in midair as they faced that light ball which kept on exploding. The white light flickered as though it was a dream. Under this white light, the duo's peerless, devastatingly beautiful faces became even more spirited and handsome. Yiqing Luo's black robe was dancing in the strong wind, like a budding rose, a rose in the dark night. Yiqing Luo's feather fan spun a few rounds on her fingertips as a ray of red light was released from the feather fan, turning into a biting cold wind blade as it met the light ball head-on and struck back. The light ball surged and this wind blade was extremely powerful. The two forces were stuck in midair and collided with each other. Gazing at Yiqing Luo's increasingly sweet and exquisite side profile under the white light, Dmo Xian's gaze turned gentle as his lips curled into a smile. His palm moved and a vigorous energy wrapped around the wind blade that Yiqing Luo created. Yiqing Luo's profound energy was already on par with those light balls. Now with the addition of Dmo Xian's profound energy, those light balls were immediately pushed back. Child Yin was extremely infuriated as he howled and hammered his chest before jumping up agilely to avoid the light ball that was coming back at him. With a leap, it pounced towards the two people floating in the air. Yiqing Luo sneered, her charming eyes were cold and indifferent without a hint of panic. She exchanged glances with Dmo Xian and her body lightened as the feather fan in her hand opened up and waved out a fire dragon, speedily coiling towards Child Yin. In the fire dragon, there were still many strands of silver silk which headed straight towards Child Yin. Under the encirclement of the fire dragon, Child Yin was already infuriated and totally didn't notice the silver silk which was attacking from the side. After it dispersed the fire dragon which Yiqing Luo had released, those strands of silver silk swiftly pierced into its other eye. That was right. That fire dragon was simply a cover which Yiqing Luo used to confuse Child Yin. So what if it was a high-leveled Mirage Beast? Mirage Beast was after all a beast. No matter how intelligent it was still a beast. After knowing Child Yin's weakness, how would Yiqing Luo let go of its other eye? Chapter 6:12. Child Yin howled as copious amounts of blood started to gush out from its eyes. It covered its own eyes as it kept jumping around and howling. How could it endure the pain of its two eyes being pricked? It cried out miserably as its mountain-like body lost its balance after its eyes couldn't see as it fell heavily onto the ground. When Long Yunzhan saw that, he had already swiftly listed out a set of battle tactics in his mind as he waved his arm and called out to the World Group's youngsters to swarm forward. The current Child Yin had already lost half of its battle ability. It wasn't afraid that it was shooting out light balls. Child Yin's huge body was indeed a great help to it during battles. But after its eyes couldn't see, this assistance became a hindrance. Its mountain-like tall body totally couldn't maintain its balance and stand up. It only had a beast's senses and sense of smell. But the surroundings were filled with the stench of blood from the magical beasts. Its ears were filled with the sounds of numerous humans walking around. How could it differentiate? At this moment Child Yin could only wait to be captured. Death was just a matter of time. In just a joss stick's time Child Yin breathed its last breath amidst the pain. The World Group's youngsters looked at their own hands in disbelief and took another look at Child Yin, who was lying on the ground, still in disbelief. An advanced leveled Mirage Beast which had walked out from the 7th level. They had killed a 7th level advanced leveled Mirage Beast? Those who were immersed in joy didn't notice that not too far away, a strange flying insect was flapping its wings as it slowly got closer to that black-cloaked man's corpse. That flying insect stayed on the black-cloaked man's face for a moment. Following that, it extended its two antennae as it slowly probed into the black-cloaked man's eyeball. Using a little strength, it hugged that eyeball in its antennae as it flapped its wings and silently disappeared. The World Group's youngsters sat on the ground as though a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Everyone were so exhausted that no one could be bothered if what they were sitting on was flat ground or a magical beast's corpse or a pool of blood. They only wanted to sit down and have a good rest. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past everyone, and after ascertaining that no one was seriously injured, she heaved a sigh of relief. She was really worried that because of her insufficient concern, it would cause her own brothers to get hurt. Lulu, distribute the medicinal pills to the brothers to replenish their physical strength. Long Yunzhan glanced at Baiming Lulu. Baiming Lulu nodded, took out a palm-sized jade bottle from her bosom, and began to distribute the medicinal pills one by one. This was the medicinal pill which Yiqing Luo had discussed with Baiming Lulu last night to prepare. These elixirs were low-grade elixirs that could only replenish one's strength. Generally speaking, Yiqing Luo didn't advocate the use of this medicinal pill. After all, an expert could not completely rely on elixirs. There would always be a time when one would run out of medicinal pills, and there would always be a time when one would forget to bring medicinal pills. It was extremely important for an expert to know how to adjust his body's constitution and quickly replenish his stamina so that he could focus on the next battle. Yiqing Luo asked Baiming Lulu to bring it along as a backup. This was an accident. He had not expected that a 7th-level child Yin would appear in the 5th level. The youths must have exhausted all their energy. Thinking of that slender figure which she saw among the group of beasts, Yiqing Luo's heart had an uneasy premonition. For safety's sake, it was better to maintain his strength. There would always be accidents in everything. After she finished distributing the medicinal pills, Yiqing Luo took a look at the Blue Dragon Group's members who were sitting by the side with an ugly expression and then looked at Ji Tian who was coaxing the lady in his arms. Chapter 6:13. Baiming Lulu lowered her head and took a look at the medicine bottle in her hands as she unwillingly pursed her lips. Towards Lan Ling Nua's earlier performance, she already bore a grudge against Lan Ling Nua. Although the medicinal pill in her hands was merely a low-grade medicinal pill, but even if it was just a stalk of grass, Baiming Lulu wasn't willing to give it to the Blue Dragon mercenary group. Lulu. Yiqing Luo shook her head at Baiming Lulu. Baiming Lulu pouted her lips as she felt displeased, but she understood that Yiqing Luo's decision naturally had her own reasons. She held onto the medicinal bottle as she walked over unwillingly. Lan Ling Nua was nestled in Ji Tian's arms, enjoying Ji Tian's gentle care, and on seeing Baiming Lulu holding the medicine bottle over, her expression instantly turned unhappy. Are you trying to poison us? I'm telling you, our Blue Dragon mercenary group will absolutely not take your things. The group members who originally stood up and were preparing to receive the medicinal pills instantly froze in midair. The polite smiles on their faces also froze. After all, previously Ji Tian wanted to kick them out of the Blue Dragon group because of Lan Ling Nua. Now that Lan Ling Nua had spoken out, the group members didn't know whether to receive or not to receive the medicinal pills, making it rather awkward. The youngsters in the world group who had swallowed the energy-replenishing medicinal pills all stood up from the ground as they gripped the weapons in their hands tightly, wishing that they could charge up and chop that woman into pieces. Earlier Lan Ling Nua's delighted look towards Yiqing Luo's death had completely infuriated the world group's youngsters. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo who stopped them, they would absolutely teach Lan Ling Nua a lesson. Take it. Baiming Lulu suppressed the displeasure in her heart as her willowy brows creased slightly as she arrogantly stuffed the medicinal pills into the group members' hands. Lan Ling Nua suddenly pushed Ji Tian aside as she stood up. You guys are definitely up to no good. Trying to poison us? No way. Lan Ling Nua not only hated Yiqing Luo, she also hated everyone in the world group. From what she saw, these ladies who got close to the Blue Dragon group were all trying to climb onto Ji Tian, trying to snatch her man. Even if she didn't like Ji Tian, but Ji Tian could only like her. Lan Ling Nua's gaze unknowingly fell onto that man who surrounded Yiqing Luo and asked about her well-being, his eyes filled with adoration. Her 5 fingers, which were hanging by the side of her body, curled up tightly one by one. All the men should be surrounding her. Ji Tian paid full attention to Lan Ling Nuo, so naturally he saw her little actions. Looking at the way she looked at Zhou Xian, his heart tightened. Men were like this. Once a competitor appeared, the previous admiration and love would turn into extreme admiration and extreme love. Immediately, Ji Tian stood up and placed his palms on Lan Ling Nuo's shoulders. His broad chest pressed against Lan Ling Nuo's slender back. He looked at Zhou Xian complacently. The complacent smile on his face froze. Zhou Xian didn't even look at him. Ji Tian's heart surged with a sense of humiliation as he raged at the group members behind him. "Didn't you hear what your sister-in-law said? They're trying to poison us." The group members were so aggrieved that they really wanted to steel themselves and leave the Blue Dragon group. But when he thought of the few years he had spent in the Blue Dragon Regiment, growing step by step with the Blue Dragon Regiment, and his own brothers in the Blue Dragon Regiment, no matter what, before today their regiment commander was indeed a good regiment commander. In the end, they still couldn't bear to part with their feelings towards the Blue Dragon group. The group members clenched their teeth as they said a sorry to Baiming Lulu softly and returned back to the group. Chapter 6:14. Lulu, come back. Yiqing Luo didn't force her. Since these people weren't willing to accept their help, then they could only forget about it. Yan Xiaoyi's spirited eyes were filled with rage as she clenched her fists tightly. "Qing Luo, they're simply too much. That slut only knows how to stir up trouble. Isn't she just jealous that sister is prettier than her?" Li Mao's lips curled upwards in disdain. As a half-human half-beast, especially a cat beast, Li Mao was able to sense a human's emotions at the first instance. Tong Ziqing's cold face revealed disdain. They want to measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Later when they meet with danger, no one is allowed to lend a helping hand. Tong Ziqing's voice wasn't loud, but it absolutely wasn't soft either. These words, which were filled with disdain, were clearly transmitted to Blue Dragon Group. Lan Ling Nuo gave a cold harumph. "Who needs your help? As for you guys, don't cry to us for help." Blue Dragon Group's members all looked at Lan Ling Nuo as though they were looking at an idiot. Was there really nothing wrong with this princess's brain? Earlier in that dangerous situation, their 100 brothers were now left with 40 over people. If it wasn't for the World Group's youngsters, none of them would be left. They had already walked on the edge of life and death, and she still hadn't realized the current situation? Human nature was like this. When you liked someone, no matter what the other party said or did, you would feel that what he said or did was right. Whereas when you really hated someone, no matter what he said or did, it would be a capital word. No. Previously, because of Ji Tian, they felt that Lan Ling Nuo was as beautiful as a goddess. But now, because of Ji Tian, they felt that Lan Ling Nuo was a source of trouble. 50 over brothers' deaths were all caused by Lan Ling Nuo. Yiqing Luo now completely believed in Lan Ling Nuo's princess identity. Damn it! Her princess illness was beyond cure. A bunch of idiots, medicinal pills poured out from the same bottle, we can eat it, but to them it's poison. Her. Qiao Jin spat out fiercely. Each of you speak less. Long Yunzhan, who had replenished his physical strength, slowly opened his eyes. Deep blue ripples appeared at the bottom of his eyes, forming circles of ripples. Qing Luo has already done what she should do. As for whether to accept it or not, that's their business. As soon as the regiment commander spoke, everyone's indignation instantly subsided. After sitting quietly for a moment, Yiqing Luo stood up and walked towards Child Yin's corpse. There were definitely magicite gems in the brains of high-level mirage beasts. Not only could his flesh and bones be used to forge superior-grade equipment, but he could also forge pills rich in spiritual energy. Also, the blood in Child Yin's body was also an excellent medicine catalyst. Yiqing Luo naturally wouldn't let Child Yin's corpse be wasted here. Just as they got nearer to Child Yin, they heard Ji Tian's furious howl. "You want to keep the huge beast's corpse for yourself?" As a group leader for over 10 years, Ji Tian naturally understood how valuable a high-leveled mirage beast from the 7th level was. How could he possibly let Yiqing Luo monopolize it all? Especially the high-grade mirage beast. There were magic crystals worth thousands of gold in their heads. Naturally, Ji Tian had already gone through a meticulous calculation in his mind. The World Group's youngsters had just gone through a great battle with Child Yin and killed hundreds of mid- and advanced-leveled magical beasts, exhausting too much of their profound energy, so their profound heart jade would definitely dry up. Even if the World Group had 60 over people, the current them absolutely could not be compared to the members on his side. Chapter 6:15. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she glanced sideways at Xianxia with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Blue Dragon Group leader's meaning is, "You also want to split Child Yin's corpse?" Xianxia straightened his back. "That's of course. The huge beast's death, our Blue Dragon Group has contributed quite a bit." Pausing for a moment, he turned back and swept a glance at the group members behind him as his confidence increased. "Moreover, our Blue Dragon Group has lost 50 over brothers while none of you have died. That's enough to show how much we have contributed." Blue Dragon Group's members all opened their eyes wide. The World Group's youngsters all had a cursing expression on their faces. Damn it. They knew Xianxia was shameless, but they didn't know that he was this shameless. He was simply shameless. He could even say such shameless words. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a chilly smile as her fingertip hooked slightly. A petite and adorable fox and a petite leopard jumped onto Yiqing Luo's arms and stood on her shoulders, one on the left and one on the right. On the backs of these two little war pets hung a space bag, and there were several pieces of magical beast cores in their mouths. Under everyone's gaze, they openly spat them into the space bag. This time round, the group of members who were rather speechless towards their own group leader started staring at that bag of magical beast cores. That's right. There were also magical beast cores. Earlier there were a total of 200 over intermediate and advanced leveled magical beasts, so there might even be magic crystal stones. They were only thinking of preserving their lives and had totally forgotten about this matter. They had not expected. Yiqing Luo actually asked her two war pets to go pick up those magical beast cores. The one with the biggest reaction was Lanling Nuo. "Slut. You actually dare to steal the magical beast cores behind our backs. Quickly pass the magical beast cores to us. Otherwise, don't blame us Blue Dragon Group for not standing on ceremony." The other members were also a little displeased in their hearts. Although towards Yiqing Luo and the others, they were filled with admiration. But earlier those magical beasts, they had indeed put in some effort. Moreover, these magical beast cores might possibly contain magic crystal stones, which was a huge sum of money. People's hearts were easily swayed by money. This was human nature. One of the group members who had joined in the battle earlier turned towards Yiqing Luo's direction and said, "Miss Yi, although the group leader's words are a little harsh, but it's not without reason. Everyone here are people who had joined in the battle. These magic cores, magic crystals, should be split amongst us." Yiqing Luo retrieved the space bag from Shiju's back and immediately grabbed a handful of it. The magic core in her palm shone brightly. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her eyes were tainted with some mockery. "Originally, I had indeed intended to divide these demon cores equally, but seeing the leader of your esteemed group eating in such an unsightly manner made me lose my appetite." Soon after, with a wave of her hand, the monster core in her hand was thrown towards the small stream beside her. Pieces of monster cores fell into the edge of the stream. He could vaguely see that there were 2 mana crystals mixed in. Mana stones. That was a mana stone. Wasn't it a little too casual to throw it away just like that? Even if I throw it away, I don't want to give it to you. Yiqing Luo looked at Xianxia, who was staring at the stream with a steely green expression as she gave a charming smile. "I hate being forced the most." Lanling Nuo stood up in a flustered and exasperated manner as she walked over and pushed Yiqing Luo fiercely. "You slut. You snatched our bear beast's corpse, and now you still want to forcefully occupy the huge beast's corpse. You even want to snatch away the magical beast core which our Blue Dragon Group had risked our lives to exchange for. Don't you have any face?" Yo. This little princess actually knew what face was. Chapter 6:16. His 5 fingers clenched tightly and scarlet traces appeared on his plain white wrist. Yiqing Luo leaned close to Lanling Nuo's face, as a pair of bewitching eyes looked at her coldly with that arrogance. Lanling Nuo felt her legs go weak and a chill rose from the bottom of her feet. He felt as if he was in an ice house so cold that it was bone-chilling. He wanted to struggle but he didn't have the strength to do so. Should I say that you are daring or foolish? Yiqing Luo's enchanting voice rang beside her ear like an evil spirit demanding for her life. Lanling Nua's eyes widened. Her exquisite and beautiful face was now twisted in a terrifying manner due to fear. You don't have the ability and yet you dare to come knocking towards me. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she sneered. Aren't you very confident in your own beauty? Wasn't it 90% sure that she would win against Xianxia? How about I do a test for you? How would Yiqing Luo not be able to tell that this Lanling Nua totally had no feelings for Xianxia? She was merely making use of Xianxia's admiration towards her to coax Xianxia to be obedient to her. In other words, she was simply enjoying the pleasure of a man being infatuated with her. Lanling Nua's face paled as she realized something. Indeed, he heard Yiqing Luo laughing coldly. I'll kill you and let's see if Xianxia will help you take revenge and kill me. Lanling Nua was so scared that her face turned pale as she stared at Yiqing Luo in terror. You dare to kill me? I am the princess of the East Continent. My status is noble. Lanling Nua was in the middle of loudly announcing her identity with a sharp voice when her body suddenly became light. Her entire person fell to the ground in a sorry state. The blood of the demonic beasts covered the ground and stained her body. The angle of Yiqing Luo's casual throw was extremely good. Lanling Nua's face first landed on the ground, and she immediately rolled in a circle. She collided with the corpse of a magical beast at the side, and coincidentally buried herself in the wound of the magical beast's corpse. When Lanling Nua's stomach churned from the smell of blood, she lifted her head. Her head was almost completely covered in blood. Just the thought of a bloody head sent chills down his spine. Lanling Nua's vision was filled with the color of blood. Her entire head was covered in mucus and blood, which flowed down her face continuously. She hugged her own face, screaming as she tried to run towards Xianxia's direction. Although the members of the Blue Dragon group had been through many battlefields and had seen many dead people, they were still shocked when they saw a bloody man charging at them. One by one they dispersed. No one dared to get close to her. Aren't you trying to distort the truth? Aren't you trying to forcefully eat something that doesn't belong to you? Don't you like monster cores? As their sister-in-law, if I don't do something for them, how can I convince the public? Yiqing Luo's chilly voice had a hint of ridicule in it. Following that, the feather fan in Yiqing Luo's hand shook slightly and a ray of red light suddenly lifted Lanling Nua's body up. Plop. Lanling Nua's entire body plunged into the stream. The stream was instantly dyed red. As a princess, Lanling Nua naturally knew how to swim. But right now Lanling Nua's beautiful face had been ruined by Yiqing Luo, and she was suddenly thrown into the middle of the stream, so how would she be able to react in time? She flopped around for a while and sunk into the water. Yiqing Luo's sweet voice was heard from the shore. It's just a slight effort, no need to thank me. It was already not bad that she didn't kill her. Xianxia was so angry that his entire face turned black as charcoal as he trembled all over. This woman was simply too arrogant. Chapter 6:17. What are you all still in a daze for? Go down and save your sister-in-law. Xianxia swallowed his anger as he dashed to the side of the stream and jumped down directly. Those 20 over members who had been following Xianxia also jumped down when they saw that. This kind of thing which could show their face in front of the group leader and wasn't dangerous at all, they were naturally more than willing to snatch it. The remaining 30 over members who had fought together with the world group previously, as they didn't like Lanling Nua, they hesitated for a moment. Eventually they walked to the side of the stream and jumped down. The group of them were in the stream which wasn't considered spacious, but they still weren't able to catch Lanling Nua. Lanling Nua would surge down from time to time and pop her head out from time to time, making a grumbling sound before sinking back down. Xianxia's heart ached for her. After a long time, even if it was a scorching hot day, soaking in the stream for a long time in such a cold place would make one feel cold. There were already quite a number of members who used the pretense of saving Lanling Nua, but in actual fact, they were secretly searching for the magic cores and magic crystals which Yiqing Luo had thrown into the stream. Standing in the dark, the crowd who were admiring this scene in satisfaction had a carefree smile on their lips. Is it fun? Xian glanced sideways at the smiling young lady beside him as his gentle peach blossom eyes overflowed with a helpless smile. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly as she rested her head on his shoulder. It's fun. How could it not be fun? Yiqing Luo moved her fingers, and under the sunlight's illumination, an extremely fine silver thread could be seen faintly from the feather fan in her hands, directly climbing to the side of the stream, onto that Lan Ling Nuo who was struggling non-stop. That's right. 50 over people in a small stream unable to save Lan Ling Nuo. Lan Ling Nuo would occasionally float up to the surface and occasionally pop her head out to catch her breath, which was all Yiqing Luo's doing. This patient with princess syndrome not only had a problem with her brain, there was also a problem with her worldview. Time and time again she had provoked her bottom line, so don't blame her for treating her as a performance toy for the world group's youngsters to entertain themselves after the battle. Seeing that Lan Ling Nuo was tormented till she was half dead, Yiqing Luo then shook her fingers as she silently retracted the silver thread. Following that, she put on an innocent and comfortable look as she leaned on Xian's shoulder, smiling like a flower. Without the control of the silver threads, Lan Ling Nuo was quickly rescued ashore. After soaking in the water for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, the blood on her head had been washed away, but she had already fallen into a coma. She was even shivering non-stop. It was obvious that she had been soaked in the water. The exquisite makeup on her face was washed away. Although her facial features were exquisite, they weren't as stunning as before. Xianxia hugged Lan Ling Nuo tightly, but he was also drenched, so how could he warm Lan Ling Nuo? They also didn't have the habit of bringing spare clothes out for missions. Xianxia touched Lan Ling Nuo's forehead and it burned his palm. It was obvious that he had caught a cold. He took out his interspatial pocket and rummaged through it for pills. However, the medicinal pills he brought out were all for treating injuries. There were no medicinal pills for treating colds. Lan Ling Nuo shivered unconsciously and kept shouting that she was cold. Her soft and delicate body continuously rubbed against his chest. If this dragged on, Lan Ling Nuo might not be able to hold on any longer. At least he had to let Lan Ling Nuo change into a set of clean clothes. Xianxia bit his lips tightly as he hesitated in his heart for some time. In the end, he still couldn't bear to see his beloved woman suffer as he looked towards Yiqing Luo and the others. Take off your clothes. She had to admit that this Xianxia's prince syndrome was rather serious. Things had already come to this stage and he still used a commanding tone to speak to her. Chapter 6:18. Xianxia clenched his fists tightly. You're the one who threw Sister Nuo into the stream. Shouldn't we take responsibility? Yiqing Luo seemed as though she had heard the funniest joke in the world as she clutched her tummy and burst out laughing. Your sister Nuo cares so much about her appearance. I'm just trying to make her face a little cleaner. Pausing for a moment, Yiqing Luo placed her feather fan on her lips as her vision swept past those group members who were like drowning dogs. What's more, as your woman and their sister-in-law, I should at least contribute to your mercenary group. Xianxia said angrily. Whether or not Sister Nuo wants to contribute to the Blue Dragon group is our group's matter. What has it got to do with you? Yiqing Luo nodded in realization. Oh yes, it has nothing to do with us. After saying that, she stretched her limbs and turned to look at her brothers. The farce is over. Let's go, let's continue with our quest. The youngsters of the world group stood up in an orderly manner. Xianxia clenched his teeth as he couldn't wait to rush up and dismember Yiqing Luo into 1,000 pieces. But looking at the woman in his arms who was losing consciousness, he gritted his teeth and suppressed his anger. He then softened his tone. Miss Yi, it was my fault for using the wrong words. Could you please be magnanimous and let me borrow some clothes for Sister Nuo? Standing at the side, the members who were wringing their drenched clothes had an indescribable feeling in their hearts. In their eyes, the high and mighty regiment commander had lost his brilliance and prestige for the sake of a woman. Now he had even thrown away his own pride. They were conflicted. On the one hand, he was bitterly disappointed in his regiment commander, but on the other hand he remembered the trials and tribulations they had gone through together. On one hand he wanted to leave the Blue Dragon group, but on the other hand he couldn't give up his feelings for the group. As a result, compared to their regiment commander's displeasure, they hated Lan Ling Nuo even more. They secretly swore that if Lan Ling Nuo dared to be disloyal to their group leader, Even if they had to bear the consequences of being kicked out of Blue Dragon Mercenary Group, they would kill Lan Ling Nua. Miss Yi, we don't want those demon cores anymore. If you have extra clothes, just lend us one. One by one, the group members started to plead. Jitsong Tian stared fiercely at the group member who said that as he opened his mouth to stop him. But on seeing Yiqing Luo's disdainful gaze, he instantly shut his mouth. Now he was the one who needed her help. He could give up on the magic cores. He could give up on the mana crystals. But Lan Ling Nua must not be allowed to die. Originally he thought that Yiqing Luo would be extremely difficult to deal with, even taking the opportunity to humiliate him, so Jitsong Tian was already mentally prepared. However, Yiqing Luo only revealed a difficult expression, propped her chin and pondered for a moment. Actually, it's just a piece of clothing. It's not impossible. Jitsong Tian suddenly raised his head. Not only will I give you a set of clothes, I can let all of you change into dry clothes. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes hooked up into a crafty arc. Clearly he was plotting something. Even though he knew it was a scheme, Jitsong Tian could only bear with it. What conditions do you have? Right now, it should be 5 in the afternoon. That was around 3 to 5 in the afternoon. Because of your disturbance, a large portion of our mission has not been completed. Yiqing Luo intentionally paused as her finger pointed to the group members standing by the side. Your beloved has turned into such a state, so I'm sure you don't have the mood to continue with the mission. I need you to lend me some men to help our group complete the mission. Jitsong Tian's brows creased tightly as his entire face creased into a ball. Borrow people? Was this a forceful headhunting? Chapter 619. This explanation might as well not explain at all. What was meant by only taking young and handsome young men and young ladies? What was meant by they were too old? Wasn't this blatantly ridiculing their age? The faces of the members of the Blue Dragon Group twitched uncontrollably. Did she need to be so damaging? The World Group's youngsters all laughed out loud. After our mission is completed, we will naturally let them go back. Yiqing Luo shrugged her shoulders with an indifferent look. This condition, whether to change or not, will depend on you guys. Jitsong Tian turned silent. Those group members also turned silent. Yiqing Luo had been paying attention to them all the time. From the looks of it, they were using the mercenary group badge to carry on their internal communication. Yiqing Luo wasn't in a hurry. Based on Jitsong Tian's abnormal concern towards Lan Ling Nua, even if she asked him to kill his brothers by his side, in exchange for a chance for Lan Ling Nua to survive, he would probably agree to it. So Jitsong Tian would definitely agree to this condition. As expected, not long later, Jitsong Tian raised his head as he squeezed out each and every word from the slits of his teeth. All right. I agree to it. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate as she directly walked towards that group of members and casually pointed. Very quickly she pointed out those 30 over people who had taken part in the magical beast battle. I only want these people. As for the rest, just treat them as escorting you back to your encampment. Jitsong Tian was patient, and on seeing that she had finally finished choosing, he hurriedly opened his mouth. Clothes. Yiqing Luo turned her head towards the World Group's youngsters. Young youngsters, take off your clothes. When the World Group's youngsters heard that, they were all stunned. They thought that Yiqing Luo's realm ring had a lot of clothes. They had not expected that she actually wanted them to take off their clothes. This was the uniform which they had been wearing for less than 3 days. Even if it was already soaked in blood, even if it was torn, it still represented their group's uniform. These youngsters were unwilling, and Jitsong Tian frowned. You want us to wear your clothes? Do you? Yiqing Luo replied impolitely. Jitsong Tian's muscles tensed up as his anger had already rushed to the top of his head. Lan Ling Nua unconsciously moaned in pain as her little face flushed an abnormal shade of red and her body, which had crashed into his embrace, was boiling hot. Jitsong Tian panted heavily as he suppressed his anger. Yes. Go get changed, Long Yunzhan said calmly. The teenagers hesitated for a moment, and then one by one, they got into the bushes at the side and began to change their clothes. Yan Shaoyi had ordered 2 sets of uniforms for everyone, and everyone was wearing them. After a while, sets of clothes piled up on the ground. The youths changed into clean uniforms and walked out. This scene made Jitsong Tian's eyes twitch. There were clean clothes, but he had to give them dirty clothes. But this time round Ji Tian had learnt his lesson and didn't mention it again. Sloppy clothes were better than these soaked clothes. A group member picked a slightly cleaner set of clothes from the pile and passed it to Ji Tian. Ji Tian carried Lan Ling Nuo and was just about to help Lan Ling Nuo change her clothes when he suddenly saw a piece of clothing covering his head. Just as he was about to tear off the thing covering his head, he heard a lady's clear and sweet voice. "These are clothes which I have not worn before. You wouldn't wish for your sister Nuo to wear other men's clothes, right?" That one sentence successfully made Ji Tian's twisted fingers loosen up. Indeed, he wasn't willing for Lan Ling Nuo to wear other men's clothes. Looking at Ji Tian's back view as he went into the forest to help Lan Ling Nuo change her clothes, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a crafty cold arc. Chapter 620. The youngsters of the World Group had already changed into a new set of uniforms as they walked out of the forest cleanly. The members of the Blue Dragon Group, on the other hand, took their dirty, blood-stained clothes and went to the jungle to change their wet clothes. Even though they were men, after soaking in the water for such a long time and being eroded by the yin qi in the magical beast forest, they still couldn't bear the cold. Even if it was dirty and messy, she could only grit her teeth and wear it. A portion of them entered the bushes to change while a portion of the group members who had changed surrounded Ji Tian's surroundings, forming a meat wall, wrapping him up tightly without leaving any gaps. As though he was worried that the people on Yiqing Luo's side would peek at his sister Nuo changing. Yiqing Luo's mouth twitched a few times as she snorted softly. The youngsters in her family were all as pure as a piece of white paper, okay? The youngsters in her family weren't blind, all right? Only Ji Tian had the appetite to swallow a woman like Lan Ling Nuo. He wondered what expression Lan Ling Nuo would have after she woke up and found out that her entire body had been seen and touched by Ji Tian. It would definitely be very exciting. The World Group's youngsters were filled with displeasure as they stared at Blue Dragon Group's side, simply not understanding why Yiqing Luo wanted to make a deal with them. Even if they didn't need the help of the Blue Dragon Group, they would still be able to complete the mission after replenishing their energy. But the youngsters understood that Yiqing Luo had her own reasons for doing so. Not too long later, Ji Tian changed into a set of dry clothes and carried Lan Ling Nuo, who had similarly changed out as he walked out. The water on Lan Ling Nuo's head and face had already been wiped dry. Her face was pale and she was still unconscious. Standing in front of the group members, Ji Tian only stared coldly at Yiqing Luo for a while before carrying Lan Ling Nuo, not even turning his head back as he walked towards the entrance of the 4th level. Lan Ling Nuo's body was already boiling hot like it was about to catch fire. He had to bring Lan Ling Nuo to find a doctor as soon as possible. He knew clearly that if he were to start a dispute with Yiqing Luo now, he would absolutely not gain any advantage. That woman was as cunning as a fox. It was as if he knew his feelings for Lan Ling Nuo and was unscrupulous. Revenge is a dish best served cold. As long as the World Mercenary Group was still mingling in the mercenary world, he had plenty of methods to take revenge. In the eyes of the members of the Blue Dragon Group, this kind of behavior was not what they thought. Those 20 over people who weren't chosen chased after Ji Tian's footsteps with wild joy. They had long wanted to leave this damned place. The air was filled with the smell of blood and gloomy qi. If it wasn't for the mission, they really didn't want to take a step here. Whereas for those 30 over people who were chosen by Yiqing Luo, their expressions were extremely ugly as they stared at Ji Tian's departing figure. Was he going to abandon them just like that? He didn't even say a word of comfort? A feeling of abandonment rose in the hearts of these members. Recalling the scene where Ji Tian wanted them to leave the Blue Dragon Group, disappointment immediately filled his heart. They suddenly did not know why they had been so persistent all this time. While everyone was staring at those members of the Blue Dragon Group, Yiqing Luo's fingertip hooked onto Shiju's shoulder as she leaned close to its ear and whispered a few words. Shiju blinked its eyes and howled softly. In a blink of an eye, Shiju's figure disappeared from Yiqing Luo's shoulder. "Qing Luo, that little slut deserves it even if she froze to death. Why do you still need to give her clean clothes?" Yan Shaoyi furrowed her brows in indignation. Chapter 621. Scapegoat? The youths were puzzled. Yiqing Luo's smile didn't diminish as her feet moved and she had already turned into an afterimage, speedily nearing the entrance of the 4th level. Among the dense trees, everyone's expressions tightened as they stared at Yiqing Luo's actions. Following that, he saw Yiqing Luo's lightning-fast figure and in a few breaths, she had already pinched a black-robed man as she walked out. That black-robed man's face flushed red from being pinched, as he kept struggling to pry Yiqing Luo's fingers away. He was originally hiding in the dark, paying attention to Yiqing Luo and the others' actions. His concealment was absolutely impeccable. He had not expected that in the blink of an eye, it had fallen into Yiqing Luo's hands. It was so fast that he still hadn't realized what had happened. Assassin. Yan Xiaoyi's beautiful eyes suddenly widened as she looked at the black-robed man in Yiqing Luo's hands and speedily rushed forward. Someone wants to kill us? Yiqing Luo nodded her head as her squinted eyes revealed an enchanting brilliance. Earlier when she was dealing with Child Yin, she had already discovered an unfamiliar aura in the dark. However, this aura wasn't strong and it had been lingering outside the battlefield. This kind of aura. To Yiqing Luo, who was once a killer, she was absolutely not unfamiliar with it. There were assassins lying in ambush nearby. After Yiqing Luo sensed carefully, she confirmed that there was only one killer. It was probably an assassin who was secretly monitoring their movements. Yiqing Luo wasn't so silly to think that this killer dared to assassinate them alone. If the killer dared to come here alone to investigate the situation, he must have an accomplice. Yiqing Luo casually threw the killer towards Qiao Jin and immediately drew out a handkerchief as she slowly wiped her hands. Qiao Jin hurriedly trapped the killer. He stared at the killer for a long time before his face suddenly lit up. Your scapegoat is referring to this? Seeing Yiqing Luo nodding her head, the World Group's youngsters started to laugh unkindly. That's what they said, anyone who offended their Madame Qing Luo, no matter who it was, they could forget about having it easy. Let's observe a moment of silence for those mercenaries. The youths all closed their eyes and observed a moment of silence. In fact, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. He had to admit that Yiqing Luo was indeed treacherous. The assassins did not know who their target was. But no matter who the target was, Ji Zongtian and the others had to take the blame. This was not a light scapegoat. If he was not careful, he might be smashed to death by this walk. If the killer's target was the World Group, when Ji Zongtian and the others left the Magic Beast Forest, they would definitely be surrounded by those killers. If the killer's target was the World Group or Yiqing Luo, Ji Zongtian and the others had left the Magic Beast Forest and they were wearing the World Group's uniform, those killers wouldn't care if Ji Zongtian and the others were from the World Group, as they would definitely make a move on them who were wearing the World Group's uniform. If it wasn't for the fact that she had already planned it out in her heart, how would she possibly be so kind as to make a deal with Ji Zongtian? Ji Zongtian's entire heart was on Lan Ling Nuo, and if it was as expected after meeting the killers, he would definitely abandon those group members and leave on his own. As for the remaining members, they looked like cowards who were afraid of death. After being abandoned by Ji Zongtian, their hearts were in a mess, so not many of them would be able to survive. As for the reason why they chose these members of the Blue Dragon Corps, she had once said that she admired capable people. These cultivators all had a pure and innocent heart, but their ability had been buried by Ji Zongtian, that person who had high expectations but low ability. And most importantly, Chapter 622. When Blue Dragon Group's 30 over members heard that, their expressions instantly changed as they swiftly turned around, wanting to save Ji Zongtian and his group of brothers. Stand right there. A chilly command was heard, making one shudder. Those 30 over members subconsciously stopped in their tracks as their bodies stiffened, not daring to move. Yiqing Luo walked slowly towards them as her devastatingly beautiful face was masked with a faint layer of frost. Step by step, she walked extremely slowly. Every single step she took made an extremely soft sound. In those members' ears, it was as though that step had stepped on the bottom of their hearts. Heavy, powerless, unable to resist. Yiqing Luo's eyes were like ice as she calmly glanced at them. Your group leader has already handed over your authority in the Magic Beast Forest to me. We're going to save. Before they could finish their words, they were interrupted by Yiqing Luo's ridiculing laughter. Save? It's too late. You're all very clear on how much your group leader values that princess. She won't be able to hold on for much longer, and your group leader must have hastened his pace. By now, he should have already met with those killers. The 30 over members' expressions turned uglier by the minute. Their original admiration towards Yiqing Luo had now turned into thick anger. As compared to their admiration towards Yiqing Luo, they were more inclined towards the Blue Dragon mercenary group which they had gotten along with for the past few years. There were simply too many brothers here who had once gone through life and death together. Yiqing Luo actually schemed for the killers to assassinate the Blue Dragon group. She wanted to borrow the killers' hands to kill Xianxia. They were going to save Xianxia. No matter how inconsiderate today's group leader was, no matter how much he made their hearts turn cold because of Lan Ling Nua, group leader was after all the group leader. This was a deeply ingrained fact. As long as you're still Blue Dragon mercenary group's mercenaries, you have to listen to my commands obediently. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she raised her index finger and gave an enchanting smile. Your group leader personally promised me. More than 30 members who had lifted their feet, abruptly retracted their feet. Yes. This was the deal that Xianxia and Yiqing Luo had made. In the Magic Beast Forest, they must help the World Group to complete their mission, unconditionally coordinating with Yiqing Luo's actions. But if they knew that Xianxia and the others were being chased by the killers and they still stood by the side, how were they going to face Blue Dragon Group? One side was love, the other side was righteousness. They really didn't know how to choose. Even if you rush over now, it's of no use. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule as she stared at the struggling expressions of these group members. His voice suddenly paused as he gave an innocent smile. Of course, if you insist on going against the deal and leave the World Group, I won't force you. Since they had already spoken to this extent, would they dare to leave so easily? Blue Dragon Mercenary Group was preparing to upgrade to a Silver Plate Mercenary Group, and they must not have any negative comments. They had totally witnessed Yiqing Luo's mouth. If they really left now to save Xianxia and the others, Yiqing Luo could totally spread the news of Blue Dragon Group violating the deal. At that time, when the Mercenary Union was reviewing the Mercenary Group's promotion, if they discovered this dark secret, it was very likely that the Mercenary Group's promotion would fail. Thinking of this, they gritted their teeth and suppressed the displeasure in their hearts. They stood where they were and did not mention anything about leaving. Chapter 623. The black-robed man struggled with all his might as his eyes opened wide, revealing a ferocious gaze as he bared his teeth in an attempt to intimidate Xiao Jin. The black-robed man had heard Yiqing Luo and the rest's conversation clearly, and had heard everything clearly. These children, who looked to be no more than 15 or 16 years old, actually had such deep scheming minds. Not only did they discover him who was hiding in the dark, they were even able to swiftly counterattack. Killing with a borrowed knife? This wasn't merely killing with a borrowed knife. It would also cause the Blue Dragon Mercenary Group to form a feud with their killer alliance. Even if they had recognized the wrong person and killed the wrong person. But in Xianxia's eyes, he would definitely ascertain that these killers were here for him, Xianxia. The black-robed man struggled to send out a signal flare, trying to warn his partner. But Xiao Jin's hands, which were clasping the killer's arms, were extremely tight. Who sent you here? Yiqing Luo walked towards the black-robed man as her vision swept past him. Who's your target? Pui. The black-robed man spat out fiercely. Damn. You still dare to be so arrogant in my hands. Xiao Jin instantly exploded as he threw him onto the ground and immediately stomped on the black-robed man's chest. This stomp was filled with strength. The black-robed man coughed fiercely as blood spurted out from his mouth. He kept on coughing violently as his body kept on shaking. A wooden token slid out from his messy open shirt. The black-robed man's eyes widened in terror as he stretched out his hand in an attempt to snatch that wooden token back. His hand had just stretched out when it was stepped on by a petite foot. A fair little hand picked up that wooden token. The totem carved on the wooden token was extremely exquisite. From that outline it looked similar to a bat. In the middle of the wooden token, there were 3 words carved in flamboyant calligraphy: Killer Alliance. Killer Alliance? Yan Xiaoyi screamed out in astonishment. Killer Alliance. That was one of the top assassins in Nirvana realm. One must know that the weakest assassin in Killer Alliance was at Mystic Profound 5th grade realm, and their movements were remarkable. Furthermore, even if you had money, you might not be able to hire the assassins from Killer Alliance. If you wanted to hire the assassins from Killer Alliance, you had to go through connections. Ordinary people naturally heard of Killer Alliance's reputation. Especially those 30 over Blue Dragon group members, their faces were steely green as they clenched their fists tightly. An assassin from the Assassin's Alliance. Those brothers, can they fight against these killers? A few of the members could no longer hold back their worry for their brothers and ran towards the 4th level. With one person taking the lead, the other members couldn't hold it in any longer. The reputation of a mercenary group was important. But if they were to watch their brothers die, they really couldn't do it. At most, after saving those brothers, they would leave Blue Dragon mercenary group. With this thought in mind, the members left one by one. You people. Xianxia chased up a few steps and pointed at those group members as she scolded, "Ungrateful. Leaving just like that, you really are a dog that can't be tamed." In Xianxia and the others' hearts, Yiqing Luo really took good care of these 30 over group members. Xiaoyi. Yiqing Luo called out to Xianxia as she clenched the wooden token in her hand tightly. Raising her eyes, she gave an extremely calm smile. "If they don't go and save their brothers, I would instead look down on them." The Blue Dragon group was their home. The members of the Blue Dragon Corps were their family and their brothers. If they really did not care about their brother's life and death to that extent, then they would really be known as a dog that can't be tamed. Looking at those people's departing figures, Yiqing Luo was even more certain of these people's character. These people should have a better place to develop. Chapter 624. You're thinking of. Long Yunzhan's handsome brows creased slightly, as though he was aware of Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Yiqing Luo tossed the wooden token into the profound phoenix ring and nodded decisively, "Yes." Long Yunzhan frowned even more. The surrounding youths did not understand the riddle between them and asked curiously. Yiqing Luo only gave a mysterious smile. "Killer's Alliance." Yiqing Luo shot her gaze towards the black-robed man. "The person who hired your Killer's Alliance is Yuchi family's patriarch, right?" The black-clothed man no longer had the strength to struggle. He lay limply on the ground, coughing out a mouthful of blood from time to time. He looked half dead. The black-robed man didn't reply, and Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to interrogate further. He continued, "Your target is me." The black-clothed man was still half dead. Yiqing Luo's eyes went into a blank as a bloodthirsty smile appeared, looking at Qiao Jin. "Kill him." Killed. Qiao Jin was startled. He hadn't even gotten any information from the black-clothed man, and he was killed just like that? Yiqing Luo said without hesitation. She could already confirm that the Yuchi family had hired assassins from the Assassins Association. She should have guessed that the Yuchi family head had lost face in front of everyone, and it might even endanger the Yuchi family's position. How could the Yuchi family head let her off so easily? Patriarch Yuchi wished for nothing more than for her to die. These killers were professionally trained killers. They were a group of desperados who did not care about their own lives at all. Moreover, the habit of not being able to complete a mission no matter how big the world was had long been ingrained in his bones. Towards those who were bent on killing her, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not be lenient. The Yuchi family. There was no rush. Prey had to be slowly teased. Only then would it be interesting. After battling with Child Een and hundreds of intermediate and high-leveled magical beasts, these youths obviously felt that their abilities had become much stronger. When it came to the rest of the mission, it was practically effortless for him to obtain the magical beast's corpse. Even the eagle beast, which was the most difficult to deal with, was completed with everyone's help. During the mission, the 30 or so members who had left also returned to the team. Their expressions were ugly, and the gazes they used to look at Yiqing Luo were filled with hatred. Yiqing Luo could tell. He was right. Ji Tian and the others were blocked by the killers at the entrance of the magic beast forest. Furthermore, Ji Tian brought Lan Ling Nua as they abandoned those group members and escaped. Those members had all died in the hands of the Assassin Alliance's assassins. Yiqing Luo thought that these group members would at least accuse her of being cold-blooded, accusing her of knowing everything but allowing things to happen. But, from beginning to end, none of them spoke a single word. And towards Yiqing Luo and the rest's arrangements and deployment, they were extremely cooperative. When the youngsters were in charge of killing the beasts, Yiqing Luo and Beiming Lulu were in charge of 3 medicinal herb harvesting missions. After being promoted to Mystic Profound 8th grade, Yiqing Luo clearly felt that no matter if it was speed or skill, it had all increased by more than 1 level. While picking the herbs, she still had the leisure to tease the magical beasts guarding the herbs. By the time they finished all 10 missions and walked out of the magical beast forest, it was already close to midnight. In the pitch-black night sky, a bright moon hung high in the sky, dotted with stars. Having stayed in the magical beast forest for an entire day, the youths immediately felt that the outside world was too beautiful. He no longer had to endure the stench of magical beasts' blood. He no longer had to endure the gloomy cold air from the surroundings. Most importantly, the 10 missions were all completed. The youngsters walked out of the magical beast forest's cold entrance, not bothering about the corpses strewn all over the place, not bothering about the other teams who passed by them. Chapter 625. The 30 over members who had been silent swept a glance at those youngsters lying on the ground. Their gazes swept past those corpses as their brows creased slightly. Following that, they cupped their fists in a manner that wasn't considered polite but wasn't lacking in manners. Since your group's mission has been completed, we've also completed the transaction between the 2 groups, so we shall take our leave now. Saying that, the group of them turned around and left. Wait a minute. Yiqing Luo's clear voice was like a pearl falling on a plate as it reverberated in this silent and spacious magic beast forest entrance. 30 over members stopped in their tracks. Does Miss Yi have any other instructions? Their words had pulled the distance between the 2 of them apart, as though they didn't want to be involved with Yiqing Luo at all. Admiring someone was easy. Hating someone was also very easy. At this very moment, in the 30 over members' eyes, Yiqing Luo was an extremely vicious lady who was adept at scheming. In order to protect herself, she didn't mind sacrificing other people's lives. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she couldn't see the disdain and disgust in the members' eyes as she revealed a sweet smile and took out a piece of Xian paper and a pen from the profound phoenix ring. She picked up the pen and wrote the world group's 3 words on the Xian paper and immediately removed the mercenary group badge. Twisting the pin on the mercenary group badge, it was a symbol of vice group leader's seal. Yiqing Luo stamped the top of the Xian paper and her slender fingers folded the Xian paper neatly as she passed it to those members. The leader's expression changed as his brows furrowed. What do you mean by this? A piece of Xian paper stamped with vice group leader's badge meant that she wanted to poach them openly? Didn't she despise them for being too old? Their looks weren't high enough? Yiqing Luo smiled charmingly as her long and narrow eyes revealed a captivating charm. As you think. This was the first time they saw someone poaching other mercenary groups' mercenaries in such an open and above-board manner. Give up, we are Blue Dragon mercenary group's mercenaries, we will only. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. Yiqing Luo interrupted the members' oaths with a smiling face as her fair fingers waved the Xian paper. I admire your characters and am extremely interested in unpolished jades like you. The faces of more than 30 members twisted. Since they were unpolished jade, what was there to admire? Weren't they supposed to boast about it when they were poaching people? What kind of disparagement was this? You need to polish yourselves. You need to find the right way to guide them. Yiqing Luo ignored the expressions on their faces as she said word by word. This is the proof that I'm giving you. You can keep it first, perhaps. You might need it in future. Of course, if you're completely sure that you want to place your future and your life on the Blue Dragon mercenary group, then you can directly tear this piece of paper. The leader of the group stared at the paper with a hesitant expression. Listening to a 15-year-old girl say in an extremely mature manner that she wanted to guide them and polish them, this piece of unpolished jade. This feeling, it was so King strange. However, none of them could refute him. They had already seen Yiqing Luo's ability in the magic beast forest. However, why was she so confident that they would definitely keep her proof? The leader's peripheral vision swept past the expressions of the few people beside him as he stretched out his hand and received that Xian paper. In front of Yiqing Luo, he was about to tear it down. We don't need it. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.